All right, guys, I want to just get your take on this. I've been saying this for the last couple of days that I think this Tim Walz accusation of stolen valor, military service is a vulnerability for him. So I just want to recap where we are for the audience. So we do this. There's 4 basic things that I think people are alleging about him and his service. Number 1, the use of the title of Command Sergeant Major. Okay. He was promoted to the title pending a few things, which he never made. And in his bio, he says Command Sergeant Major retired. That is factually inaccurate. He retired at the lower grade. He had not earned it. We'll talk about that. Second, over and over again, and we'll play the clip in just a minute, he talks about banning guns like I used in combat. Well, he was never in combat. 3, there's a question about whether when his unit deployed to Iraq, whether he abandoned them or not. We'll talk about the timeline. And then 3rd, he talks about being a veteran of Operation Enduring Freedom. Again, more of a nuance here. It's sort of like his orders probably were cut. We call them GWAT orders. They were meaning that he was part of OEF, but clearly he never went to Afghanistan or Iraq. And is that playing fast and loose with the facts? All right, Tim, I want to start with you. Is this issue salient among people writ large, or is it confined to people who have served in the military because they get it?
Well, I think for sure that people who have served in the military get it. I'm not really sure. I think the jury is out on how much this is going to matter to people who did not serve in the military. I will tell you that I think that the Trump campaign, I think the signs are clear. The Trump campaign is going to make a significant issue of this. I know Chris LaCivita, who's a senior advisor at the Trump campaign, and he hired me for my first ever political job back in 1999 at the state party, and worked on the George Allen U.S. Senate race in Virginia as the press secretary. And LaCivita used to come to my door in my office with his Marine Corps sword and point it at me and say, "Who are we attacking today?" And I'd be like, the opponent, sir. Right. So that was 25 years ago. He has not lost any of that fighting edge and any of that fighting spirit. And they are going to hold Tim Walz's feet to the fire on this. I think that once you explain it to lay people, non-military people, they will get it. And I think especially the part where he stands up there, we'll see the clip where he said about the weapons I carried in war.
Well, let's just pause for a second. Let's just play that. I want people to see what we're talking about. Can we put that up and just show people what we're talking about?
I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
Those weapons of war, which I carried, and by his own admission, he never served in war. Is that a foot foul, or is that a legitimate attack?
That is absolutely a legitimate attack. He escalated. He's talking about banning guns and probably the government confiscation of guns. And he quite clearly made the choice to say that these are not guns that I would like to see in civilian use because I have used them in war and I know what they are for. They are for war because I have used them in war, but he did not. So yes.
Well, the irony is I would guess that he's carried a 9mm, which is a standard issue, and probably an M4. Which is interesting because I don't even know. I mean, I'm sure he probably trained on the M4, but I doubt that he ever carried it. So Kelly, is that, I feel like, are we splitting hairs? Is the average voter out there? I mean, you at the Washington Times, are you guys seeing this? Does anyone care? Or is this just a bunch of right-wing military veterans that are like, this is ridiculous?
No, people care because he's lying. And he's trying to use his military record to his political advantage by leaving out key facts and omitting key references. And, the fact of the matter is there are people within his unit who knew that they were going to be deployed to Iraq. And that's when Tim Walz decided to get out of the military, to retire, to run for politics, because he did not want to take his team into Iraq. He did not want to deploy. Now, the media is going to try to cover this up, obfuscate his actual record and the timeline here. But there are people within his unit and this is a new thing. And so what is crazy to me and boggles my mind is that Kamala Harris and the vetting team and Eric Holder looked at this and thought, no big deal. No big deal. And it is a huge deal because his team and his his campaign has alluded to the reference that he was in Afghanistan. There are previous articles that have been published that said that he served in Afghanistan. Now the press is trying to clean those up because that is factually untrue. So I think the fact that people can see very clearly that, when it came his time to serve, he was basically, the quarterback on a football team going into the Super Bowl. When he was his time to serve, he said, I'm going to sit this one out. And everyone underneath him who looked at him for support being deployed to Iraq, basically he threw him under the bus so he could pursue his own political campaign. So I think this looks terrible. I think the Trump campaign is going to use it. Chris Lasavitas, very famous for Swift Boat. And so I see the ads already, but the more people that are paying attention to this, more people are made aware of it. They're like, this can't be true. Is this real? But the right-wing media is the only people that are reporting on this fact as of now.
Tricia, does this issue have resonance with younger voters, do you think? Or are they like, I don't even know what you're talking about?
I think it's the latter, Sean. I think that this is going to resonate in the fact of phoniness, that people feel, especially young people, that the Kamala Harris and now Tim Walz campaign are not actually serving what they say they are. They're saying, you see a lot of the MSNBC, CNN analysts saying, oh, this guy has the style of a Midwestern moderate. In reality, he actually is very far to the left on anything from immigration to gender mutilation for children, but that he seems like this nice Midwestern dad. Well, you're trying to serve me tofu that looks like ribeye. People aren't going to buy that. And this is another continuation of that same narrative.
That's a great analogy.
And I think somebody touched on it here just a few minutes ago. I think there is no way that the Harris vetting team missed this.
Yeah.
Absolutely, they identified this. This was an issue when he ran for governor. It was an issue in his race when he ran for Congress. They knew about this. And I think, as Kelly said, they decided it was not a big deal. That is a huge indictment.
Do you think that they decided it wasn't a big deal, or they didn't I think they just don't get it. They were like, he answered this question. No big deal. Too.
Yeah, I mean, that way may well be too. They may have looked at it, didn't understand it, but thought they did, and then made a judgment that it was fine and to go ahead and proceed with Tim Walz. And in fact, they were wrong and didn't know of their own ignorance on the subject. That's entirely possible.
Well, to Kelly's point earlier, who does get this is Chris Lasavita. What a full circle campaign political moment that the guy who was behind Swift is now leading
They served it up. You know, it also undermines Kamala Harris because, everybody's going to naturally focus on the VP candidate when the VP candidate is first announced. But Tim Walz has fast become, over the last few days, a pretty significant issue and not the top of the ticket. Now, some would say that, the Trump campaign should be focusing on Kamala Harris. And I think that's probably good advice, generally speaking, because she is the presidential candidate. However, she's being overshadowed by her VP pick.
But doesn't that
not for a
doesn't
good
just
reason.
go to her? But can't you pivot and say, look at the judgment she displayed?
Exactly. Yes.
Right,
you have to apply it to her. You have to
pivot back to her.
You can't forget that she is the main opponent. Walz has now become a detriment, and I think something that she has to drag around. Is a terrible choice.
Well, I think it also demonstrates a level of arrogance that we rarely see in politics, especially within Republican circles, because we don't think we can get away with it. But the fact that the Kamala Harris campaign, they must have known about that. They thought, it's not a big deal. The American people won't care if he never actually served in Iraq. We can put that on the resume and tout it as he's got over 25 years, military experience, and leverage that against J.D. Vance, an actual Marine who served in Iraq. It boggles my mind, but also the arrogance of just picking Tim Walz and thinking he's just a white guy, a Midwestern white guy, and all those white people in the Midwest, all of those, backward hillbilly Republicans will gravitate to him merely because of his skin color and where he's located in the United States of America. They didn't even consider his radical progressive stances on everything from giving illegal, immigrants free healthcare and college tuition to, cutting down parental rights and allowing children to get gender mutilation surgery without the parental consent. It's just, to look at his record, you think, whoa, this guy is nowhere near the middle. But I think that Kamala Harris and her team just thought because he's white and from the Midwest, then, the average everyday American is going to buy the narrative that he is America's grandpa and just go with it.
Yeah, and it's inexplicable politically. Let me just squeeze in this one last thought, Sean, and then I'll shut up. Inexplicable politically. Most time a candidate like Kamala Harris would name a VP who brings something to the table that she herself does not have. Like with Shapiro, what he brings to the table is probably Pennsylvania. That's probably a good one.
It's a huge
right?
one.
That one was okay. But Kamala Harris has spent the last 3 weeks trying to get rid of all these crazy leftist policies that she used to have, right? These positions. She's lying now, or she's doing it through staff, really, saying, oh, you know what? I don't support banning fracking anymore. And she's lying to voters, saying she's changed all these radically left positions. Well, she just added Tim Walz to the ticket, who drags her all the way back to the left again. He reinforces all the things that she was just trying to escape from. It makes no sense politically unless she really has a very serious problem with her left wing. And if that's the case, then she's in bigger trouble than they let on.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.